Is Tracy Cortez the best base for MMA? Brian Ortega was just talking with Dominick Cruz about his relationship with Tracy Cortez. And in case you get confused right off the bat, I'm not talking about that Brian Ortega was talking about Dominick Cruz, about how Dominick Cruz is in a relationship with Tracy Cortez, because, you know, she makes the rounds. And I know that some people would think, wait a minute, she's with Dominick now? No, that's not what I'm saying. Brian Ortega was talking with Dominick Cruz about how Brian Ortega was in a relationship with Tracy Cortez. And it was on Dominick Cruz's podcast, Love and War, which makes sense in this situation for Brian Ortega to come and talk about this. Is the perfect setting because there was a little bit of love, and from the sounds of it, a bit of war. And it was kind of awkward. I don't know if they had talked about this briefly beforehand. I know a lot of people, when they come on like the late night shows, talk shows, they kind of talk with the producer. They figure out what they're going to ask about. I don't know if he brought it out of nowhere, because when you listen to the podcast, and look, again, I do my due diligence for you. I saw clips of this. I saw some articles, and I was like, hold up. Let me get the full context. Let me watch the whole podcast, okay? And it came out of nowhere. It wasn't like some kind of smooth transition, or they built up to it, or Ortega dropped some nugget that Cruz is like, all right, I'm going to pick up on that. It came out of nowhere. They're talking about past fights, past things that they had in common, whatever, with the UFC. And then he's like, all right, so what the heck was going on with that situation? It just came out of nowhere. And I'm thankful for the way that Brian Ortega responded to it. And man, did he really come out with some... I'm going to be surprised if there's not some kind of a fallout from this, again, because of who we're talking about here. This Tóxica, El Tóxica Avenger. And it kind of reminded me of when you're a little kid, especially back in the day. You know, things are different now, but especially back in the day. I mean, I had toys 100%. I'm not talking about like 60, 20, 20, or like percentages. I'm talking about I played... You remember the He-Man, the Masters of the Universe? I played with toys that were from the ground up, made out of asbestos. I'm not talking about like 30% asbestos, 70% polyurethane. It was just straight up asbestos. Like you crack it hard enough against Skeletor, it's just going, poof, just don't hit. We had to play with face masks on. And that's before it was political. It was crazy, dude. But I'm talking about back in the day when you're a little kid. And you see the packaging, right? But who reads the packaging? The packaging says, you know, technically, it's a toy. It's meant to be played with. It is for kids. So you can play with it. But the packaging lets you know loud and clear, if you read it. I guess it's not really loud and clear unless you read it, right? That, you know, you got to be careful. And there's certain ways that you got to navigate this toy. You know, how are you going to play with this toy? How long are you going to play with this toy, right? And one of the most important things, never, ever, under any circumstances, ever, put this toy in your mouth. Now, I'm going to assume that at one point or another, Brian Ortega most likely violated these instructions, right? I think as adults, we could come to this conclusion. But he was talking about how she reminded him of himself. Because Cruz was just like, bro, hindsight, you know, we're here now. What the heck, bro? He's trying to figure out what's going on. And Brian Ortega was talking about how he was, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. I started Googling Brian Ortega and Scientology. I'm not even lying. I'll show you my search history. Actually, give me a few hours and then I'll show you my search history. But Brian Ortega was talking with Cruz about how he was listening. How did he say? He worded it in a weird, kind of a vague way about how he was listening to the wrong people. But he said it in a way like if not they were just like his coaches or homies. It was like they were really speaking into him. Like if they were his like spiritual leaders or something. He said it in a weird way. And he's like, I was really listening to the teachings of these people. And I was like, wait a minute. I heard a while back that I think like Dominick Cruz was a Scientologist or something. Are they kind of like forming a bond right here? Like, did these dudes come out of the same? And when I listened to for the full context in the podcast, you're welcome, chanclas on the ground and everything. When I listened to the full context, he was simply talking about some coaches that he had and how they were always butting heads with Renier Gracie, which actually does seem like a solid dude. And seems like he does give Ortega solid, sound advice. But he said he had these other coaches that were actually trying to live vivaciously through him. And Ortega actually said that he feels like they were trying to live these kind of lives through him and be like, man, you got to go out. You got to be on the scene. You got to party. You got to be with these Instagram models. You're a fighter. You can't be at home watching Jeopardy with the lady in your footy pajamas. You can't get down like that home. You got to be making the rounds. You got to be out here like Leonardo DiCaprio. That's what you got to do as a fighter. So Brian Ortega was like, okay. And he just did it. And so when all this conflict arose between he and his lady because of his coaches and all the distance that had formed because he's always out there partying, he's making the rounds, he's fighting, he's disappearing from fight camp. He said when he would go back home, he's like, me and my lady had nothing in common. She didn't understand me. So then he was on a quest to find himself. And he said that. I'm not trying to be silly here. He told Dominick Cruz that he was trying to find someone that reminded him of himself. He wanted to be in an intimate relationship with himself, short of any sort of gayness. So he found in Tracy Cortez himself, and I'm not trying to be inappropriate here. I don't mean that way. I mean in a metaphorical way. So he found himself in Tracy Cortez in a metaphor. Well, I guess I mean, in a both a literal and a metaphorical way, but more importantly to what I'm saying right here, in a metaphorical way, because they're both fighters, they're cut from the same cloth, they live the same kind of lifestyle, and he was like, she will understand me. So he was kind of like, he kind of had the thing, the beanie dropped over his eyes, they were in that kind of a honeymoon era. Because he said he didn't even realize till 4 months in, he went, hot dog, 4 months in it took him. And I'm thinking maybe if because Brian Ortega, I've historically not liked that dude. He always seemed like he was feeling himself a little bit too much, liking the smell of his own pedos and whatnot. And honestly, it seems like he turned it around. And I always say this, I didn't used to really like Sean O'Malley and certain people, but I always say, hey, if there was a reason I didn't like him, and then they changed that reason, why am I going to still be like, no, I already decided I'm not going to like him. If there was A, B, and C why I didn't like him, and then they changed it to D, E, F, then why am I going to, that's crazy, right? So it kind of looks like he's made a change. He's kind of acting like a mature dude. But at the time, I think they kind of deserved each other. I think that's why it took him 4 whole months to see who she really was. And it's because of who he was. Because of who he was at the time. If he was the type of dude, look, I love it when people figure things out and when they stay together, right? But especially when there's kids involved, it's like, I don't like it, but at least I guess I could wrap my beanie around it if he's separated from his lady. And it's like, all right, man, I feel like you could have figured this out and not just listen to your stupid coaches. But okay, but then he left his kids. And he said it. He told Dominick Cruz, he's like, yeah, I left my wife, I left my kids, and I kind of started missing them. Oh, really? Okay. I guess it's nice that you kind of finally started missing them. But it's almost like if he had these metaphorical, like these blinders, like almost kind of like the eyelashes of Tracy Cortez. And I said it months ago. I said, for all we know, Tracy Cortez could be every bit as good of a fighter as Valentina Shevchenko. She just can't see. It could be a matter of vision or the lack thereof. It might have nothing to do with like when we see what we see in the cage, it might have nothing to do. She might have the best fundamentals, the best skills, the best techniques, but how you going to use it if you got the jaws of life in front of your eyeballs? So it's like in a metaphorical fashion, that's what Brian Ortega was dealing with. Like he couldn't see through these. He couldn't see through that fog. And once he did see it, once he did get socked in the head, like I think it was Rose Namajunas, right? Once that metaphorical Rose Namajunas went, haka, and the things went flying off, then he goes, ugh, and he goes, oh, snap. And he wanted to get rid of her, but he didn't. He told Dominick Cruz that once he found out who she really is and that she was crazy, he said she was crazy. She was toxic. He said that he's like, I can now. I can at this point. And he said, and I've never heard of this in my life, he said he couldn't dump her because of ego. Ego. Now, we've all heard of ego lifting. That's kind of like a thing in the culture right now, ego lifting. I've never in my life heard of ego dating. There was a certain point past 4 months, and I don't even remember how long they were together. I mean, it's pathetic enough that I'm making a video about this, but I'm not that pathetic. But 4 months in, everything after that was straight ego dating. And he said, bro, I left my wife. I left my kids. I left a bunch of my Levi's because they didn't fit in the hatchback. I had my family turning their back on me. He said his mom didn't want to deal with them anymore. His sibling, everyone's like, we're excommunicating you. You're done. It's like when you leave the Amish territory. They're like, you're dead to us. You're out. And he's like, what? You guys are just being a bunch of haters. And they were trying to tell him how she was. And he didn't want to listen. And he said, I couldn't go back now with my tail between my legs. It's embarrassing. He didn't want to have to deal with that because he felt like he'd already burned all those bridges. And everybody knew what she was from the start. That she was basically a walking filter. That Tracy Cortez, they thought of her and they didn't try to hide it. That she was basically a living, breathing Instagram filter. They didn't shy away from how they felt about this new love interest. This wasn't going to be one of those type of blended situations. So he had to make a choice. He made a choice and he chose wrong. It's an oldie. It's an oldie but a goodie. Never mind. I have music playing in my headphones right now, as you know. If you're a frequent flyer, you know that I'm playing Ralphie Pagano on my ears right now, but it's okay. That's neither here either. And then finally, when he decided I can't take it anymore, he tried to dump her. He tried to. It reminds me of that song, Girl by the Beatles. When I think of all the times I tried so hard to leave her, she will turn to me and start to cry. And she promises the earth to me and I believe her. It was crazy. He wanted to get rid of her. But she would about bobbed him. She wouldn't go. Could you imagine if it was the other way around and she was trying to dump him and he wouldn't go? Dude, he'd be serving life right now. She would have him toed him. He'd be behind plexiglass right now. But she didn't want to go. And it's like, okay, what do you want to get for lunch? Like, what do you do? What do you do? Do you give her the elbow sopa? If it would have been the other, it's crazy, man. The what if it would have been the other way around is ridiculous. But whatever, he was there at that point. He didn't want to listen to his mom. And it was very similar to Ilya Tapuera. He's been coming out. We've been seeing all the little excerpts. He said, I should have listened to my mom. I should have listened to her. She told me not to mess with that Miami Heat. These dudes running around here not listening to their mothers. He did the same thing. And then I saw when he was talking to Ariel Hawini, I think yesterday, Ilya Tapuera was talking to Ariel Hawini, and guess what? He moved back to Miami. Ilya Tapuera is back in Miami. And when I thought that, when I heard that in my beanie, back in Miami, it kind of sounded like a sequel to me, doesn't it? Back in Miami. It kind of sounds like something that'll come on, like, you know, what's that channel called? It's kind of like one of those chick channels. I can't remember. It's like the one that all the Hollywood Inside Stories will come on. What's it called? Entertainment? I don't know. I can't think of it right now. Leave it in the comments. That's how I comment farm. It sounded like a spin-off, you know? Ilya Tapuera stars in back in Miami. It's kind of like if Young Sheldon did a spin-off when he was like an adult now, and it's like old Sheldon. It's basically the Big Bang Theory now that I think of it. I was going to say it's Young Sheldon, but he's older. Young Sheldon starring in Old Sheldon. But that's basically the Big Bang Theory. But he's back in Miami. He's back in Miami looking for his future ex-wife. Ilya Tapuera is trying to fall in love in the club. His homies, his family, of course his mother, everybody is trying to tell. They're trying to warn him after the fact. They try to warn him before, trying to warn him again. They're telling him, Ilya, ladies like yours, your ex, right? The one that you just made a fool of yourself, the one that you just went full Tomas Aspinall as far as the MMA community is confirmed in regard to that chick, your ex. In Miami, listen, she is a dime a dozen. But Ilya doesn't know how to take a metaphor. He doesn't know how to take a life lesson. He was told by all his loved ones, hey, your ex, she's a dime a dozen. So what does Ilya do? He goes back to Miami with a pocket full of coins. Ilya, respect the metaphor. Instead of respecting the metaphor, he's manipulating the metaphor. The metaphor? I was going to say the metaphors. He's manipulating. He's trying to hack the metaphor. He's trying to reverse engineer the metaphor. By the way, these mothers that are always telling their kids not to do this, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like an overbearing mother type of thing, right? And I think it's ironic. Because it seems like when they have that kind of a mother, it seems like people like Brian Ortega and Ilya subconsciously, because of like, who's that dude that says that every dude actually wants to be in a relationship with his mom? I can't remember. I don't know. It might have been, was it Frazier? There's this dude that was like a psychiatrist that he's like, hey, at the end of the day, every dude just wants to be with his mom. And maybe subconsciously, people like Brian and Ilya are trying to seek out relationships with their own mom. They're trying to find that overbearing woman that's going to walk all over them. And the mom is basically telling them, hey, don't you dare get with a woman that's like me. And I don't even know if the mom's saying that. I didn't read enough of that psychiatry book. I don't even, because I know that supposedly all the dudes want to be with their mom. I didn't read the chapter that says if maybe the mom also wants to be with the kid. That's crazy. I don't know, though. I didn't get that far. And Tracy almost got away with it with Pereira as well. She moved on from Ortega to Pereira. And I think she smartened up a little bit, you know? I think she started like evolving. You know how they talk about certain animals and like over time, they started to like gain certain defense mechanisms and stuff like that to help preserve themselves in the wild. I think Tracy kind of did something like that. And she smartened up when she went after Pereira. And he's always out there on the hunt looking for a little chamacita, you know? And I think she did something smart because she found a dude that couldn't speak English, supposedly. She found a dude that couldn't speak English. So she's like, surely he'll put up with my shenanigans. And don't call me Shirley. Surely he'll put up with my shenanigans. Because he ain't even going to know their shenanigans. He's not even going to know. He's just going to hear blah, 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 blah. And he's just going to see this. He's just going to see that Instagram filter. He's just going to see that in real life Instagram filter. And that's all he's going to know and love. And the reason that she was able to drag it out was because of the translator. You know, that big lovable dude translating? And I think there was a lot of things lost in translation. But one evening, Pereira wanted to get a little more intimate, you know, and they were going to have like a candlelight dinner. And he put one of those Vasco things on. You know how they got those earbuds now that translate in real time? So he's like, hey, take a walk. He told the translator, we need to be alone. So the guy took off, and then Pereira put the thing on. He's like, Chama, he found out like he could, all of a sudden he could understand her, and the wheels started turning, and that was it. Tracy Cortez made Alex Pereira go full Tom Hanks, and he's like, I just felt like running, and he never looked back. And I've never seen him healthier. Remember when he used to look all sucked in? Speaking of Skeletor, when he was all sucked in like Conor McGregor, now he looks thick and healthy, which happens either when you're really, really happy in a relationship and you're all comfortable and whatnot, or like when you separate and now you're happy again and you're kind of feeling yourself. And he's kind of, it's a little on the pudgy side. It's kind of like when John Jones was trying to go heavyweight and everyone was making fun of him and calling him the pigmentally blessed Pillsbury Doughboy. But nobody will say a word about Pereira. Everybody's praising him, even though he looks very, very pudgy. It doesn't look good. But anyway, she moved on. She moved on to Pereira, and that ended. But let's go Tarantino. Let's go back. There was also Paulo Costa, that she had her little rendezvous with. And, you know, nobody really adds up this timeline. Nobody ever thinks about it. That That was around the era where he heavily turned to the bottle, to that secret juice bottle. And I don't know what she did to him. It was very, very short-lived. And Paulo Costa, he tries. I'll give it to him. But he still, to this day, does not have the best English. But Tracy Cortez, we got to hand it to her, has gone through 3 different weight divisions in the UFC. She has gone through 3 entire weight classes. She's clearing divisions in the UFC like BJ Penn. Tracy Cortez is clearing out UFC divisions like if she was BJ Penn. And she's not even done yet. She's only 32 years old. She's not even close to being done. She hasn't even entered her Cougar era yet. That's when they ramp it up. That's when they ramp it. The younger years is when they're trying to be a little tactful and try to play hard to get a little bit. The Cougar years, that's when they start living in them dog years. That's when they really pick it up. You know, start to lose a little bit of that shame because the clock is ticking. And you know what? Now that I find out more about this story and really dive into it, I start to realize that we can't really blame Brian Ortega, and I don't think we should. What I think we should do is I think we should be asking the question, is Tracy Cortez the best base for MMA?